Recently I met a lady called Regina who thinks about football the way some people think about sex work, so I thought I'd talk to her about her opinions.
Now, obviously, I've never been to an actual football match, and I've never actually spoken to anyone directly who's been to a football match or is involved in football. But I'm absolutely sure, as a result of reading some newspapers, that I'm more than qualified enough to comment upon the scourge on our society that's football. Football can be a highly lucrative business, meaning that young boys are attracted by the assumed glamour and are sucked in, even signing contracts at a young age to football clubs who groom them extensively. Football exaggerates the difference between the sexes. I don't really have any figures for that. I just know that there are a lot more men than women on the screen, and it seems to be the men making the money, so I've just concluded in complete ignorance that it's very, very sexist, and so it should be banned. I have no idea of the statistics, but I've seen violence and I've heard violence being talked about in players. They can sometimes exhibit extreme violence, as can the football fans themselves. This leads me to believe that it's fundamentally a violent activity, and if it was banned, there'd be less violence. I really haven't looked into this in any sort of academic sense. It's just my feeling. Now again, I've not researched this at all, but I've heard that there's racism in football, and that's terrible. Football can actually be a racially charged environment, and obviously that's not good for our young people, or in fact our old people, or indeed the players. Very, very bad things. Sometimes players from abroad are trafficked and brought into England by the wealthy clubs to serve their needs. Many players receive life-changing injuries. Sometimes their career is over as young as the age of 25, and then what do they do next? What if they make so much money they don't have to work again? Isn't that even worse? What does that tell our young people? It sends them a very dangerous message. I've not spoken to any young people, but I really don't need to. And then we have the issue of inequality. Football is more unequal than South Africa. Again, I don't have any numbers on this, but players in the Premiership earn a great deal more than players who aren't very good, and this is fundamentally wrong and capitalist and unequal. And however much money a player might make, the club, the company behind him will always make more. And this exploitation of the players for money trickles down to exploitation of the fans, who have to pay their own money for season tickets. Indeed, even the televised games, I believe, are behind a paywall, so they have to pay for that. What an exploitation of their need to see football by making them pay, by draining them of money, health and happiness on a systemic schedule, week after week after week, feeding their addiction to see what happens at the end of the Premier League for the year. I'm not sure I'm getting the words right because I don't know anything about football, and I cannot state this enough. So I have concluded that football had too many flaws to be safe, and anyway, I'm not interested in watching it, and therefore I don't really think anyone else should be interested in watching it. What sort of grubby little man wants to watch football? And who wants their children exploited by being lured into the football industry? No one in their right mind, I can tell you that.
But the thing is that Regina doesn't know about football. She doesn't like it, so she's not found anything out about it. She doesn't know the joy of discovering that you're good at something that people want to pay you for. Perhaps she doesn't understand what it's like to be able to support yourself and sometimes get wealthy without any formal qualifications. And perhaps she doesn't understand the pleasure of watching someone who's supremely good at something, doing something that you wish you could do and maybe can't, but you can imagine being in their place for the duration of the game. And perhaps she doesn't understand the feeling of not being lonely because you're in a crowd surrounded by other football supporters who want the same team to win. People talk a lot about the potential harm of porn, but they don't tend to talk about the ways in which it serves not just the performers, but its audience. And just like with football, there's stuff wrong with it. And just like with football, it can give you immense pleasure that doesn't take over the rest of your life.